Welcome to another TheSoulman stream. For this portion, however, I do want to talk about something that doesn't get talked about a lot from other WoW players that I've seen and watched online, and that's mostly free to play World of Warcraft. Like, context before this, I started playing World of Warcraft in Warlords of Draenor, played through 7.5 years until I quit of the last the patch before the last patch of Shadowlands, the expansion, and roughly around the first month of TBC Classic. After that, 3 years, I had quit. Voice break. I had quit and played other MMOs and games throughout 3 years until I came back just this Saturday, or this Monday, last Monday. But the reason why I wanted to talk about free to play with World of Warcraft is because I think it's something that has been joggling on my mind during those 3 years. Because it's something. Because a part of me did miss WoW during those years, and a part of me wanted to get a chance to experience it a little bit, but without having to pay for an expansion, the latest expansion, or have to spend $15 a month to be able to play even classic WoW. But I have a list of the stuff that I wanted to show, and this is basically my idea of a free-to-play element within World of Warcraft Classic. So this includes normal, SOD-ish, because there's a lot of weird stuff with that, and hardcore WoW. So within the first column is all characters slash alts must be self-found and with a max of only 2 to 3 characters per account. And the reason why you want to have a limited amount of characters within a free-to-play element is because you don't want to abuse the alt slots within the starting of the game, especially with naming and as well as limiting the types of classes that you're able to play. So if you wanted to try out, so if you had like a warrior, a priest, and a mage, for example, like that's three at most. But if you wanted to experience like a shaman or a paladin, you would have to get rid of one of those characters in order to make a new one. But the reason why I think 3 might be best is because if you have two different main alts, and you also, well, I don't think a bank alt will actually work now that I think about it, because of what's going to happen within the list. But the self-found system is a really good system. Like, it helps prevent stuff for bots as well as people abusing the gold economy with World of Warcraft. So limiting the amount of characters per account for each player can help limit that kind of risk with the gold economy that's with the already pay-to-win players that pay $15 a month. So that's my thoughts on the first one. The second one is max level cap to 50, 10 levels below normal max of 60. And the reason why I think 50 is a best max for a free-to-play game is mostly because it mostly gives you the most experience that you can have with World of Warcraft Classic. Because with like retail, they had like a limited level amount of like level 20. This was before the level squishes that they've had in the past as well. But they just give you like a small taste of the experience that you have with World of Warcraft. I don't know what they give with Classic WoW, but I don't think it's 50, at least to my knowledge. But or if they even have one for Classic WoW, a free to play element. But for 50, it gives people a lot to do and a lot to experience within the World of Warcraft and be able to do all the things that most other players would be able to do within those levels, but will prevent them from doing end-game content, which is the more powerful stuff, really. Like, a free-to-play player shouldn't be as powerful as a pay-to-play player. Sorry, my words are jumbled up, but this helps create a bit of a power balance between those two player types, and it sort of gives players a lot more of a dish rather than a taste of what World of Warcraft has to offer. And with the stuff that's going to be listed down below as well, it gives them a lot of options. So but but for the next one within this list, can only do dungeon groups, but no raids or raid groups should be doable. Now, dungeons should definitely be something that free-to-players should be able to experience, but raid groups and raids shouldn't be able to be doable. And I think the earliest raid that players can get into is UBRS, Upper Blackrock Spire, and for that, they shouldn't be able to enter into that kind of thing because again, that's end game types of content that a lot of free to play players can try and cannot farm out and get as powerful as the end game players, sort of like in Twinks, which I'll cover later on within this list as well. Like it gives them the normal experience of dungeons, but if they wanted to experience raids, they would have to pay to play in order to get to experience that. Because raid groups, or raid dungeons and raids themselves, have very powerful stuff that can be pretty abused and stuff like that, that can even rival some endgame players. Even, but it's another reason why I have the level cap at 50, because again, it creates a good power balance between the free-to-play player and the endgame player. But for the next one, must have a gold cap of 500G, can be lower, but at least enough gold for players, level 4 mounts to be available. So for this one, it's pretty simple. Players can't get their epic mounts. Paladins and warlocks shouldn't be able to get their quest for their epic mount as well. And a gold cap also helps. Again, it creates a good limit for players to be able to not have to worry about what to spend and stuff like that with like consumables and stuff like that from vendors and all that. But it also gives them a plenty amount for mount riding as well as being able to buy a mount. So, because I think new players, free to play players, should be able to experience that kind of thing. It helps make them wonder, if my mount speed is this good early on, it should be even better later on if I do pay to play at some point. If they wanted to get a better mount speed or something. That or they could just get the carrot, but I don't know if that'll be enough. But another thing I wanted to mention is cannot receive any world buffs besides Songflower, the fellwood flower that you would find in different locations within the zone that you can pick up and you can receive a buff from it. But the reason why Songflower should be the only buff that they can have is because some of the other world buffs are completely busted. Like if they had like full potions, full like scrolls and different types of flasks maybe, as well as the types of world buffs like Rend, Dragon, Z- Zalazar or whatever it's called. Like all these different world buffs added onto that, it just makes them even more absurdly powerful, and even for twink alts. So limiting that choice just to Songflower, which is a pretty decent buff, like it's really good, but it at least gives them a nice taste of what that kind of power would be like instead. But speaking of like potions and elixirs and stuff, primary and secondary professions cap should be 225 expert, which is basically the one before the last mm, profession cap that you can reach, which is 300 for I forget the what the other one was called, but artisan. That was what it is. Artisan. It's a rank before artisan, but with the level cap that they're going to be on, they're probably going to be able to reach expert within that profession cap. But this also helps limit the stuff that they can access to. Like, I don't think that they can access stuff like the rich thorium vein, as well as some thorium veins, as well as some herbs and other stuff. So it helps limit that kind of like frustration of like, oh, this free to play, all these free to play players are mining all these different in game ores and stuff like that, while none of the pay to play players are even able to get those kinds of items for their raids or their gear. And for that, that's why I think having a profession cap for both primary and secondary should be around the expert thing with their level cap. So that's professions. Now, this is a part of Battlegrounds, which is a bit complicated, to be honest, but I tried to think this down a bit, but I'll read it out. For PvP instances, they should only be able to do AB, Arari Basin, and WG, which is Warsong Gulch. They would most likely get destroyed within the 50 to 59 bracket, pretty obviously. So if they would be able to go within the 40 to 49 bracket during leveling before hitting 50, then limit them to only 50 to 59, it should be enough for them to experience the battlegrounds of WoW. And that's sort of my thoughts on PvP for free to play players, because I would still want new players and free to play players within that to be able to experience those instances similar to like the dungeons, but they won't be able to experience the level 60 battleground, which is Athari Valley or whatever it's called, AV, but it would still give them an option to be able to go into those instances in PvP and stuff. But the reason why I said 40 to 90 before hitting 50 is because I want them to think about, oh, if I do PvP before I hit 50, I probably won't get as destroyed in the 50 to 90 bracket compared to the other players within that kind of bracket. And it sort of gives them like a safe option within that instance, but 50 to 90 will definitely be a bit of an issue. I don't know how something like that can be solved, really, but you would have to, at some point, it would probably have to make like its own separate bracket just for this individual number, but I don't know if they're going to do that, but this is like a simplified version of what I could do. My thoughts on the PvP instances for free to play players. For the next one, it's about twink ults. Twink ults could definitely be a problem. However, if people made them just to camp low levels in World PvP or to grief, they could be reported heavily within the free to play side of World of Warcraft, but if inspected wisely from a GM's review of the problem, just so it doesn't become a constant problem of F2P players just to get reported without reason. So, with free to play, there's definitely going to be a lot of twink ults. Like, that would probably be undeniable. Because there's a lot of powerful gear within the twink levels, like the one levels before the next big level, basically, which is like 19, 29, 39, 49, and such. But with the free to play element that could be added to WoW, there would be a lot of people who would try to abuse that with World PvP, which could be a problem. Like a level 60 could probably go in there and destroy them, but it depends on how persistent and they can be. But for a lot of like the low level zones and stuff like that, if people were able to report the ones that are actually griefing and doing wrong stuff that they shouldn't be doing within that zone, like camping a quest mob that people are trying to get but haven't left in 10 minutes even from completing that quest, they can report it to a GM or report a ticket for it to get that person reported. And if a GM or whoever's checking it can inspect the problem and see if it's there, they can report that player and possibly lock that player behind a pay-to-play sort of like effect to it. I'm not entirely sure what kind of system that would go with, and it would probably be a bit complicated, but as for the twink stuff, just like a report or like a a bit of a, I think a ban would be too extreme, is the thing. Like, depending on how bad the situation is, an indefinite ban would probably be the solution, but a lot of players that are just playing for the first time and experiencing stuff and who don't know how to play the game will probably play it in a weird way, and they would have to pretty much explain their actions to a GM in order to like appeal for it. So it's a big kerfuffle with all that stuff. So I'm sure it's something that can be explained by other people, but for the next one, seasonal events should still be doable for free-to-play players, but again within the level limit. So there are some holidays that World of Warcraft has. Like, these are like monthly, I think. But there's like different types of rewards, consumables, cosmetics, and other stuff like that. But I don't know how much of it is doable within level 50 and below. So anything that's within that should be doable. Anything that's max level from that shouldn't be. But I'm not too familiar with the seasonal events and holidays, so it's something that people can probably talk about. For the next one, this is a lot more new because this is recently. Like, this is something that just got added to a hardcore WoW, but dual spec may not be available to free-to-play players. So the reason why Well, at least in my mind, I don't think they should have dual spec because I feel like for most players who play the pay to play, they use it a lot for like raids and PvP and in-game stuff. A lot within that type of gap. So people who are like level 50 and below, they're not going to have a lot of talents, is the thing. Like most of them might be able to fill out like one talent tree, but might not be able to fill out some other stuff from the other talent tree. But they should still have to pay in order to reset it. And with a gold cap that they have at level 5, or a gold cap of 500, the highest cap that they should have in order to respec, I think, should be 20 gold. Like, I think that would be best, especially if they reach level 50, because they would pretty much just have to farm stuff in order to get that chance to respec and all that. But that's my thoughts on the dual spec thing. Now, reputation level cap of Revered. This is basically with the reputation system that they have within World of Warcraft that I think is not really a big deal or anything, but there is some items within some factions that are like epic gear or some in-game levels. Maybe within the Argent Dawn is what my thoughts are going to. But capping it to Revere is like capping secondary profession to expert. It's basically just a step back from the max profession that you can use. So with it just being at Revered, you still get access to some stuff that the faction vendor might have, but not the high end stuff. And nextly is the honor cap should either be rank knight, rank 6, to lieutenant commander, rank 10 within free to play. Should be below epic quality plus epic mount ranks, just so players have a reason to do PvP for rewards. So, from looking this up, lieutenant commander is like the last rank where you can get rare gear. And I think that could possibly be the best rank max limit that free to play players could have. Because, well, one, because it gives them a reason to PvP and get that kind of gear. And secondly, like from here, it doesn't allow them to get the more high end or epic quality stuff that most other players in the endgame could get. But rank 6 would probably be the lowest that I would probably put the honor system for free to play. But for the max limit, it should definitely be rank 10, or at least between rank 6 to rank 10 is my thoughts on that. And lastly, this is basically just for the subscription thing. Excuse me. Alright. If a free-to-play player buys a subscription to World of Warcraft, their current characters should have an option to revert the self-found choice and let them have access to all the normal WoW stuff. But if that sub runs out and expires, all characters that were reverted should be locked completely until resubbed, and must make a new character to start again if going back to free-to-play. And this one is pretty much a lot more self-explanatory with like the subscriptions and stuff like that, because the self-found choice is like one of the best things that Classic WoW had gotten recently, in my opinion, because it helps a lot with certain bot problems and stuff like that. But if they could make it as a permanent option for free-to-play players regardless, but be able to revert that if they subscribe, I think that would be a good option for a lot of free-to-play players or new players that are getting into World of Warcraft for the first time. But the reason why all the characters that get reverted should be locked until resubbed if this sub runs out. The reason why that should be the case is because they shouldn't be able to have whatever they gained from after level 50 and all that other stuff and still be able to play with that. They shouldn't be able to have that kind of stuff be playable is what I'm trying to put out. But in order for them to go back to free to play, they would just have to make a completely new character and just start over again. But these are my thoughts on a free to play element for World of Warcraft Classic. I do have a retail version that I'm also working on too, which here we go. Which I'm still working on as well, as of today, of making this, or streaming this. But this is the retail version, and some of it is definitely a lot different. I'm not going to go into complete details of it until I finish it, but consider this like a preview of some of the stuff that I might put on in case people want to know of that kind of thing as well, because Retail WoW is the main World of Warcraft game, depending on which is better, I guess, to people, but it sort of gives like a different perspective of the different free-to-play elements within these game variants of World of Warcraft, because there are so many variants now. But the reason why I think a free-to-play element would be very nice is because it gives people an option to try out everything, at least until before endgame stuff, to have a good experience of World of Warcraft and continue to if they want to play for free. And that's sort of my thoughts on all of it. I'm gonna probably post this video on Twitch as well as YouTube, and if anyone has comments on it, be sure to leave it down within the YouTube video, or maybe talk about it. I don't know, but this is something that I had set up a few days today, even from coming back to WoW just last Monday. But that's pretty much it. Like, that's pretty much it for all of it. So that's the end of